Welcome everybody to this week's End of Month podcast. We have Robert here, and we're going to open up with the carrier. As you we were discussing earlier, that Derek has finished work on the Sea Whiz for the carrier,
hmm
um, and we saw it just blasting birds. So is that going to just be for the birds, or is it going to handle the ground stuff as well?
I'm gonna post the video into the channel, and then I'll put it. I'll post a link on the YouTube as well, so you guys know what I'm talking about. But basically, this will be the process involved in podcast channel of upgrading the carrier and being able to add weapons to it. And then let me go ahead and link that to YouTube chat. Okay. And the basic gist of it is it'll be able to engage ground and aerial targets for the Sea Whiz. There are some specialized missiles that are coming for just anti-air and for just intercepting missiles that are coming to the carrier. And then there's another one coming for basically just countering air units. Um, we did play around and tweak with them to get it to where they were mostly realistic, but then that made the carrier broken. So we ended up basically just kind of giving it a more like reasonable range for the sea whiz and everything else. So it was like, okay, if birds are coming, it's gonna start shredding them. You know, if you see a juggernaut or a couple of special infected or standard infected on a beach shore, if the gun has line of sight, it's gonna shred them. Then the idea is that you can use that in some cases to provide fire support to your units that are off the coast.
It's just like,
Uh,
see that juggernaut? I don't want to anymore.
yeah, basically. And the thing is that they can throw rocks at your carrier and they can damage it. So it works both ways. Is that if you bring your carrier into the shore, uh, things might happen in terms of basically them trying to attack it. So that's going to be coming out tonight on experimental. Well, you guys will gain the ability to upgrade the carrier and to be able to just generally, like use the weapons, give us some feedback. There's a lot more bug fixes in this experimental. That's one of the reasons why we've been holding it for so damn long in relation to the last update we had earlier in the week, because it wasn't just related to the carrier. There were fixes and changes across the board when it came to AI, when it came to the repeater, when it came to like basically like text and UI prompts, just basically little things that we kind of got reported to us with the uptick of Spider Cat covering us. Well, we got like a whole new influx of people coming in, and they were like, "Well, this is broken. This isn't working. We're not sure about this. Blah blah blah." So we were just kind of working overtime to basically just listen to what everyone was saying, and then from there, trying to catalog it and be like, well, that's a big deal. We didn't realize that was happening, and we thought we had fixed that fully, but I guess the repeater is still not relaying to people like what it does, how it works, and just from another standpoint, one of the other reports we got on Steam was just cases where the Leviathan would still emerge even though you had a repeater, and that was a bug because they were being forced topside by something you had done prior. So it was like these ripple effect of like bugs and issues that we kind of like ironed out, like fixing up the juggernaut so it's less likely to get stuck on walls, and that kind of came from working on the Leviathan. So tonight's update will just kind of be like a cultivation of the last week of just like little bugs and little issues people have been reporting. I believe from talking to my devs that it's still very much possible to slap the carrier across shorelines. If you're really, really trying, you can probably bug the carrier out and try and get it to like slap an infected like on a beach shore. So that's something that we're going to be working and looking into going into next week. Some more of the like crazy bugs for the carrier for movement. We'll be going into next week. Our goal is right now is to get the last of the systems and features in for the carrier, and then at that point focus a couple more days if needed on bug fixing, which I'm sure is going to be, and just general bug fixes that you guys run into. And then we'll make the winters change and make it to where basically she can't be built and whatnot, and just kind of go from there. And then obviously you guys are getting the hovercraft. So like right now the order of operations is getting the weapons. There's like two more weapons to add, and then it's gonna be essentially the hovercraft, It's going to be the docking, and then it's going to basically be at that point bug fixes, changes, X, Y, and Z. So I would say around Tuesday, Wednesday is when we'll probably have the next. We'll have the next experimental roughly, and then you'll get the other next weapons that are allocated. You'll get those upgrades, you'll get those purchases, and then from there the carrier will be complete from a weapon standpoint. And then we'll move on to the hovercraft, and we'll get the landing craft set up. We'll get the elevators set up, and then the next stage from there will be the docking. There's certain docks around the level, and you'll notice that some of the docks change in proportions and size to accommodate the carrier. Um, yeah, and then from there it'll be polish, and then at that point we'd push towards the doctrinal stuff and the vehicle stuff. Trying to think what else. And then over the month, we also worked on revamping and cleaning up a lot of the base systems for the weapons. And that's been a big proponent of what Michael has been pushing for in terms of basically just simplifying and improving systems for like how do we do weapon spread? How do we do like burst fire weapons? How do we do the garrison system? How can we simplify it so then that way it's more efficient, easier to work with from a standpoint of replication when we get the co-op, modding, and at the same time, from a development standpoint of being able to work on the game. Because what's important is that your tools are simple and easy to work with, and they're not overly complicated, and it doesn't take a long time to implement things, and be able to keep a good quality and a good speed. So that was something that we kind of hit upon going into basically last week. Was more so behind the scene changes. You will notice that shotguns are a lot more efficient. You will notice that your units are a lot more accurate with the first couple of shots. So that those are two things that you will notice from these behind the scenes changes. Um, we revamped and redid the burst fire code, so we'll be pushing some more burst fire guns in the future. For basically like we've tested it and we're confident that like Michael's a gun nut, plays Call of Duty, plays Battlefield, all that stuff like every day, all day, competitive. So it was one of those things where it was just kind of like we need to fix the burst before we reintroduce one again because it was really useless. So we fixed it, and that's going to be one of the things that now that we have that kind of back end structure there, we're going to push for getting at least one burst fire gun into the game. Probably I think it was the M16 version. I forget the exact version we had previously, but we took it out because it was useless and nobody wanted to use it. Um, Let me see what else was there. Other than that, level designers are working on essentially the augmentations to the levels. They're working on basically figuring out what structures to place in, like the designs we're going to use to replace structures that have been there for like the police stations and the hospitals and the stuff that we talked about in the previous one, for the doctrinal changes that are coming in terms of strategic resources. Um, let's see what else is there. I mean, that's pretty much it. Then obviously lots and lots of pathfinding issues with the carrier, lots of bug fixing. We believe we fixed and hunted down the remaining errors that were related to the carrier. For sometimes when you would build a crap ton of units, sometimes they'd keep moving with like ghost movements, or sometimes they'd like run to the edge of the carrier and they get stuck for some bloody reason. So we did go through and we fixed as many of those cases that we could find and reproduce. So when I push out the update tonight, let me know if you guys are running into that issue in terms of like units just kind of ghost moving almost on the carrier or moving to the edge of it and then just refusing to move again. As far as we know, we resolved every instance that we could find. But again, if you guys run into something, just report it on Steam, report it on Discord, and we'll be keeping an eye out for that going into Monday, Tuesday. Um, Let me see. I don't really have anything else. Unless you have any questions you want to hit there before we go into questions from the community. Is there any questions you wanted to point at,
One second.
Dermar? Okay. Well, here, let me just pull up the. Let's see. Um, yeah, we also improved the spread of the shotguns in terms of basically their spread distribution and we just kind of reworked the spread systems, and then let me see, was there anything else that was really relevant? I don't think there was. I think at this point it's more so just seeing if Duravar has any questions, and then from there we would segue into community questions and just kind of seeing what you guys have to ask us. Um, Oh, right, and we did fix some sprinting issues. Is that we also reworked some of the animation blueprint systems. So, like, I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but sometimes when your units would sprint, their chest would act very crazy. Like they'd almost like their arms and their chest would be out of sync, and they'd have this weird like movement. Like you can see it right now if you play Cepheus and you look very closely at them when they run for the engineers, for example, or some of the assaults. There's like an animation echo or like a bug there that we worked out and we were able to fix. So that'll be in the experimental too, but it has some improvements to their animation and how their animation tree functions to fix just some issues with visual bugs. Uh, I'm assuming
Visual
Deriva's,
bug.
yeah, some visual bugs with the animations where basically they were just kind of like going it. They're like kind of like a, it was like a sling, it was like a ring. I don't know how to say it. It's like a slingy almost, where like it just kind of go all crazy and kind of self-animate with the chest bones. But anyhow, do you have any
Huh.
questions you want to ask Derivar before we move on to community questions?
Um, None that I could think of. I did have one for the carrier, but I got distracted, so I can't remember it now.
Okay.
Yeah. One of those
Positivity.
days. One of those days.
God help
Yeah.
us all.
Positive. We all
Any,
love positivity,
I
don't we?
suppose. Okay. So then why don't you open it up for community questions?
All right. Let's see what I saw someone ask about docking. All right. Yeah. So they ask him when the docking's going to be added.
Let me stare at the calendar. After the carrier, so I'm gonna guess another probably a week or two, depending on just basically giving things the time it needs. So if I had to guess, roughly a week or two. But because right now once you get the last weapons in, we're doing the hovercraft, and then once the hovercraft will probably take us a week in its own to get working, because that's going to be a unit where essentially you can deploy. It's an actual unit. You'll see your units physically on the hovercraft, and you'll have to land it on the beach, press a button, the door will come down, and then you'll be able to drive your units off of said hovercraft and be able to use it to like basically transport them from island to island or back to the carrier when you finish the mission. So that I imagine that's going to take us at least a week minimum to kind of get that working and get it working correctly. Not to mention the bugs. Um,
Oh, the bugs would be insane.
don't
You'd
remind
have
me.
a hovercraft. You'd have a hovercraft like going halfway across the bloody city.
Oh,
Don't
I
mind
know,
me.
I know, but I'm sure there's gonna be some people that use the hovercraft as like a normal unit and just drive it through the city. I guess that's a possibility. We were gonna limit them to like three. I think that's roughly the amount we can fit inside that carrier. But it'll come down to basically the technical artists and basically how many they're able to fit in there reasonably. Because we wanted to have it to where when the door opens on the actual carrier, you'll be able to see the units inside them. You'll see the hovercraft, and they don't just. It's not like a de-garrison system per se, like the little birds or like the Blackhawks. It's like they're physically in there. Um,
So you're going like the broken arrow route where the doors will open, the unit backs out of the carrier.
yes, that's the idea. And then you gain control of the unit after it ejects from the back. Um, anyway, back to you, Dervar.
Right. Second, we've got a few questions coming on now. Terminal asks, are we getting the ability to repair sandbags, barbed wire with engineers? They're slightly damaged. HBUI symbol starts cluttering the screen and over time unless you destroy them every time they get scratched.
Which is pretty goddamn often. I'll tell you what, we'll squeeze that in there for Monday. Let me just copy that, put it in my
Just
notes,
squeeze
and
it.
we'll put it in there as a community suggestion just to kind of find some time for it on Monday. So that'll be in the next experimental, roughly around Monday, Tuesday, because that's enough. That's a good enough justification just to just push that in there now, because I can see where that can get frustrating. And me with myself, I don't even notice it. I just destroy it and rebuild it because I'm used to company heroes. 'Cause I don't think you can repair
Yeah, I don't,
sand. I think that we got that from Company Heroes, and we just never actually bothered putting in that quality of life change of like the
well,
sandbags, but it makes total sense.
well, sandbags in Company Heroes don't even have a health bar. They're kind of more of a physical object, like a fence. And so if you hit them, say with artillery or hit them with a tank, they just explode and fall apart. They don't really have a repairable health.
I guess you're right.
Um, yeah, they're kind of like an ambiguous sort of. Why can I hear myself? Anyway,
Uh-huh.
they're sort of an ambiguous sort of static building. So they don't really have a health bar. It's just something you can put down, and then once it's down, it kind of stays there.
But I think when it comes down to it, is that she's on to something in terms of like we just need to put that in there because you figure I put it off, and it's one of those things where like it totally makes sense on paper, and from what everyone's saying in channel, obviously they've been. I'm surprised no one's asked before, or if they have, maybe I somehow missed it. So yeah, we're gonna squeeze it in there regardless on Monday. Back to your Darvar.
All right. Joker asks, when will the new water animations come, and will the carrier stay quiet, or will it get sounds?
We just gave it over to a sound effects guy. I would say about 2 or 3 days ago. Now that we have it closer to being how we want it to move and function with the ambient sounds and with the water. He's currently taking a look at the project from a top down standpoint, and essentially just kind of figuring out how to go about building up that soundscape. So yes, it will have sounds, and it will be basically a thing that we do. When it comes to the VFX, um, I would imagine that that's going to come online sometime this week in terms of the boat ripples on the water. We've been kind of hesitant towards putting it in there because we've been R&Ding and testing a lot of approaches to doing water simulation. First, we were going to do a static mesh with basically like nanite and do it custom with some kind of shader. And then we were also looking at like the water system in Fortnite and a bunch of other things, but there's other requirements and other ways that you're required to build the level that just yeah, like you'd have to have built the level like that way from the get-go. So now we're going more in the nanite, like high poly water, kind of like the Battlefield or like I guess Call of Duty water, where it's like from what Dimitri's been telling me as a technical artist, is basically like a really high poly static mesh object, and then he's going to be running some kind of shader instruction through it and other like instructions of like things that can interact with it to basically make it to where simulates water, simulates waves, simulates the dispersion that the carrier has in real life. So he's been basically R&Ding it and testing it and trying to find what looks good, but it's not going to nuke your computer. So I need to regroup with him this week because right now they got pulled off of that to get the weapons in because he was also the one that was doing the initial weapon balancing for the aircraft weapons and essentially just kind of getting everything in there, testing them, making sure they were working, and then now he's going to be switching back over to that. So now that he's back on that, Monday-ish, Sunday, because technically he works on Sundays instead of Fridays. So when he gets started on Sunday, I'll sit down with him and we'll basically see about getting that in this week because there should be no reason why we can't. Um, and part of it will also be testing it, and you'll very likely see a new video option that basically sets the quality of the water because you figure it's going to have to be scalable to a certain degree. So then that way, people that don't have really good video cards and CPUs don't have to run really, really, really complicated water calculations. But I'll have to talk with him and we'll get from there. Um, what else you got, Dervar?
Yeah, Dunberg asks, would DLC skins for vehicles work with the hovercraft one added?
Absolutely. Every CERC vehicle from now to like ever is going to support those supporter skins. I mean, we're not Activision. We're not gonna fucking Jew you. Like legitimately, whatever you buy is just when the new helicopters come out, when the new whatever come out. Like it's always gonna support it. If there's a bug, if there's a visual issue, just let us know. We'll fix it.
Okie Sir Commanding Officers, hey, I was thinking of like civilian groups starting their own communities. If you played infection free zone, you would know what I mean somewhat.
What do you
See,
mean?
I've played infection free zone, so I, that game is all about starting a community, right?
Okay.
And the AI sort of group together, build fences and take over like houses and buildings and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And they build bigger and bigger communities as time goes on.
Okay. Wait, so what is the question? Sorry.
So they were asking if the civilian groups would do the similar thing to that.
So you're asking. So the question is basically whether civilian groups grow and build more of a community. Is that the question?
Yeah, I'm assuming so.
I mean, they they do that now in terms of maybe I'm not misunderstanding the question, but basically what they're programmed to do is they're programmed to expand and then slowly take over strongholds or stronghold garrisons, whatever you want to call them, to essentially like solidify themselves in a location. They're set up to spread from zone to zone um, based off of their personalities. When it comes to basically giving them more life and attention to detail, um, I'm trying to think. I mean, you figure right now they're on the back burner until we can find more time to basically go back and add more systems and like add missions for them and whatnot. But like right now they do that from a surface level, but it might not always be that apparent that they're doing it because sometimes they just don't get the chance because the infected kill them or the what do you call that? The raiders kill them or you get in the way. So you figure like it was, but yeah, that's generally how they're going right now, is in that way. Back to you, Derwar.
Okay. Can we use the hovercraft for evac? Ice money asshole.
You mean for like civilians?
I assume so.
No, not at launch. That's not going to be a thing. I didn't even think about that honestly. I was trying to keep it purely to the helicopters because you figure uh, the helicopters can get in and out of an area very effortlessly, and they were the simplest way from a technology standpoint to not have them get stuck, even though they sometimes get stuck on skyscrapers. So for right now, it's going to be limited to the helicopters. And then maybe I'll consider the hovercrafts going into the future. That's not a bad idea. It's just more so, for the time being, we're going to keep them to the helicopters.
Okie dokie. I've just lost my place in the list. Hang on. Element asks, what's your vision for the game in a year or two?
Where's that question? That's deep.
That's under the hovercraft one.
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Okay. Alright, so for the vision for the game, the overall vision. The idea is I'm going to talk from a top down standpoint, so there's going to be a lot of areas that you guys don't know I'm going to be talking about from the roadmap. Is essentially the goal is that it's the aspect of the RTS. It has the simulation, it has the DNA research, it has a doctrine revamp, so then that way people have more meaningful ways to play the game. Um, and then basically it has the operator, it has the custom heroes, and then at that point you're able to kind of play by yourself or with your friends to essentially figure out how would you ethically or non-ethically stop a viral outbreak. That is effectively zombies. So, because one thing I wanted to do that was important to me is being able to bring together people that like RTS games and people that hate RTS games when it came to the third-person operator and being able to push that maybe like similar to like a silica almost, where it's like you can have groups of people that are playing as operator, and then you can have groups of people that are playing in RTS, and they can work together and they can communicate, and basically it's like a joint effort in terms of basically like accomplishing your goals, doing whatever you're doing in this play session, expanding, attacking, fighting, but at the same time getting the game to a point to where it's a realistic depiction of just how the world deteriorates and how the world changes through your action or inaction based off of just like, okay, like if you go to this area and you're fighting people, the area's gonna seem more decayed, and there's gonna be like miscellaneous damage that occurs. But the same thing is gonna happen in levels for like areas that are like outside, where like there's civilians that are there's like the dynamic civilian groups and the factions that are fighting each other, because ultimately, inevitably, when we get to the campaign, when the game is done in a year, from an early access standpoint, is we need to have Pierce and Natalie in there because they're an important part of the simulation of the deterioration of a city. Because Pierce will basically simulate the firefighters, the police, the rescue workers, the emergency services, and then Natalie will basically be more of the extremists, raiders, anarchists side of things. And
Hang on, you're gonna 1 second. You're gonna have to cover everything. I've got to head out for a sec.
okay, so
Something's just come up.
essentially, okay, so that's the biggest thing in terms of like being able to have an active simulation of this world, but then at the same time being able to, because this is something we don't talk about that much, but the map's current layout was because of a technical limitation where we couldn't go any larger, so we ended up making that fictional island that's right next to Treasure Island called Western Treasure Island. It has a little college campus, and it has a circle, and then it has like little like land bridges and all that. That's gonna end up being deleted in the next year or so. It's gonna be moved. It's gonna be moved above Angel Island as a coastal town, and then San Francisco North is gonna basically be like. It's like where the edge of that island is roughly where San Francisco North is going to be. San Francisco North is like all of our islands put together times two, roughly 2 to 3. So the idea is like you figure that's another thing goal of ours is to basically get the game to look more closely resembling the real world version of San Francisco and Treasure Island. So you'll see a modernization of just kind of like taking that island, reusing its aspects to build another coastal town or island right by the redwoods forest, where you go up the Golden Gate, and then you have like those little like those boats and yacht areas up there up north, and then taking the map that we've already been building, and we have to go back to it for the campaign, and then pushing that out there as this huge landmass. And then now you have the interplay between the carrier and using the bridges to basically get around and kind of navigate. Like if you were to take a box, it would basically be from like the redwood forest at the top left all the way to the bottom right, which would be basically that naval yard in the bottom right center of San Francisco. I think it's like Mariner's Trench. I don't remember the exact technical name of that island, that port. So that's the idea that we're going for within a year, is to essentially get that land space over, get it to where it's an active simulation of the area, or then balance out the water combat in terms of when it comes to like the infected, because we're going to be adding in more infected classes to the game. So then that way they have whales. Sperm whales do come to San Francisco. So the idea is that we were going to have it to where they jumps to them to basically be able to transport units from between the islands, the land masses, and give Chelsea more mobility. And just a couple other special units that we've been teasing and hinting to, as we slowly but surely just kind of work up the concept and then find the right contractors to basically just kind of conceptualize and make these monsters from a modeling standpoint. Um, so honestly, there's a lot coming because you figure we have a lot planned going into 2024, um, just to kind of get the game out there, get it to where it needs to be. And then there's also the aspect of just the things that I can't think of right now in terms of quality of life changes. Because I'm sure there are plenty that the community has, there are plenty that I'm going to have when we get to that point mentally, where it's going to be like, okay, all the features and systems are in. We're at the end of 1.3. Now we need to basically just kind of put the icing on the cake and just kind of iron out little things here and there, and just kind of get the game to where it needs to be in terms of like lessening the micro, because I have seen that quite a bit recently. Is that people like I think I saw a review recently on Steam. It's a negative review actually, where he was basically saying that the game is the most fun when you're fighting from like area to area to area, and you're like having to basically like bring in people and do all this, but then there are aspects of gameplay where the micro could be a little too intense, to where like it kind of detracts from the combat. So I think it's like finding that balance in terms of basically just kind of like all the systems, because it's a juggling act. So that's something we struggle with the UI, and we struggle with basically the micro versus the yeah, just the micro in general. So it's one of those things where we need to basically just kind of push that front, I feel, as we get closer to finishing 1.3, going into 1.4, because 1.4, by all intents and purposes, is the campaign. It's the it's the campaign. It's the factions, and then that point 1.5 would be the next thing, because 1.4 is that's easily like 6 months easily. Um, but yeah. Anyhow, now I'm just going on and on. So let me see if I can pull another question. Let's see. Let's see what I got here. Will co-op ever see dedicated server support? As the game already chugs even high to mid-tier PCs, it seems like adding hosting may not work well. So we have some internal solutions to improve performance, but we're waiting until we get the co-op because we don't know if they're going to work well. Is that because this is our first game? Most people on the team have only ever modded things. We've only ever dabbled. So it's one of those things where like we're a little bit conscious about changing too much behind the scenes until we get to co-op, so we can field test custom movement components, figure out what works and what doesn't. Because right now, one of the most complicated aspects of gameplay is movement. Not the like AI pathfinding, we've found ways to mitigate it, but it's the actual simulation of movement of your characters via their physics systems, their character movement component, and we've found ways of dynamically ticking it, dynamically lowering it, and keeping the accuracy of movement, so that way we can maintain very large amounts of units on screen, very large amounts of units in game at once. But those systems need to be pushed even further when we get the co-op, so we can cement ourselves in terms of like, okay, can we double the infected population from a technical standpoint? Because that's something that me and Derek are always, like debating about, is that we want to double or triple the amount of infected, because we've seen YouTube videos of people that have like thousands of units in the Unreal Engine, but they wrote a custom movement component, and they took a lot of liberties in terms of like how realistic their movement is. So it's not like a human being anymore. They more like slide, and things are more generalized, like in Supreme Commander, because like if you ever notice, most RTS games are very empty. Like you play StarCraft, you play Supreme Commander. When you have a crap ton of units, generally you want that world as empty as possible, to simplify the pathfinding. So then that way you don't have to worry about having really complicated algorithms, and all you have to do is worry about having the units kind of slide against each other and move around kind of weird at times, but you don't have to worry about them getting caught or stuck into things. So we're almost in a rock and a hard place in terms of our optimization and how we do our pathfinding, because like we're in this like uniquely like in the middle place where like our density of our world is really crazy, and it's part of it. I believe is going to be writing a custom move component when we get the co-op, and then part of it is just doing more R&D and more research in terms of like, okay, all the features and mechanics are in. People are still, you know, mad about about the pathfinding. It's still not where they want it to be. Then it's like, okay, like we need to maybe do some studies, and maybe see what we can figure out in terms of like what we can do internally, or maybe we have to get someone that has worked on a bigger project that can come in as a contractor for a couple weeks and like rewrite our pathfinding system. So I feel like pathfinding is going to be a constant issue until we have the time and the budget to be able to allocate in it just in its entirety that, and just remove it like completely, because you figure I feel like it's serviceable right now, but I'm not happy with it. It's one of those things where it's like I'm just kind of biding my time until all of the major line items are in, people are happy with the amount of content and the value proposition, and then I'm going back and I'm going to be like, okay, let's tear these systems down. Let's see what we can do about basically improving the pathing. And for right now, let's find ways of basically putting a band-aid on it till we get the co-op, till we get and co-op and beyond. Because realistically, co-op is going to be a huge there's going to be huge changes to how we go about doing massive aspects of the project to just basically simplify it and make it easier for replication and make it easier for just basically optimization because it's the movement, it's the pathfinding, which is really low nowadays, and then it's the what was the other thing it was? Movement, pathfinding, and the God damn, I'm having a brain fart right now. I think it is just those two actually. It's the yeah. So like you figure that's something that we have to work on. When it comes to dedicated servers, I was playing I think it was Pal World recently, and I was noticing that they even have people because we host a dedicated server for the team. We play Pal World. I set it up on one of my extra computers, and I was like, that's a really good idea. Because then you figure you can host and you can play it on your normal computer and you have a lower pop count and you have certain restrictions in place. But then you go dedicated and you put it on a computer and you run like a command prompt window and then you're able to give it more resources and then you're able to increase the player count. So that's something we're going to look into, but I don't know what goes into it yet. Like it's one of those things where like when we get the co-op, we're gonna get the first basic peer-to-peer system working, like Stellaris, and then at that point we're gonna look at what are the limitations, like what did we have to cut, what did we have to change to make it work in a network ecosystem in terms of optimizations and things that maybe is there a tether when you're an operator and you can only go so far away from like other players. Okay, can we remove that tether in a dedicated server? Like these are all things that we have to look at when we get to doing the co-op, and then work with the community and kind of work with what our technical limitations are to basically push it, get it out there. So that way we can get your guys' feedback, and then we can also see what's technically feasible. And dedicated servers definitely are something that we're kind of looking at anxiously, and we're like, oh, you know, that is something we can look into to kind of like mitigate it and be able to have it where people can run it on like a server box or something. Because realistically, it comes down to just having a lot of RAM and a really good processor. Because your video card's not doing anything really in those instances. So let's see what we got here. Next question. I have no idea where. What did I get? Okay, yeah, the questions have like moved quite a bit. Hold on. Yeah, for CERC commanding officer, you're correct. Is that at this point we're going to just grandfather in the faction work with the campaign, just so that way everything gets done at the same time. So like the campaign and San Francisco North and the factions are all just kind of being bundled together now, because you figure they all have to be done for the campaign regardless. So yeah. Um, the questions channel. What do you mean? I don't know what that question means for 618 is there's no questions channel anymore. You can just ask it in the podcast channel, or you can raise your hand in the channel and talk on voice. Um, can we get VCL sales for Curious upgrade? I don't know what that is for Jokas question. Joka, I can't say your name correctly. I will copy and paste that and come back to that. Maybe if Derivar was here, he'd probably know what that means. I don't know what that means. So let me come back to that. Um, let's see. Yeah, so Terminal's question is pretty accurate. Is that when we first implemented a lot of the weapons for the carrier, they were made to real world specifications? Nope. Too broken. You'd have like a bird swarm on like literally like on Angel Island, and the sea liz would turn towards a direction and start opening up, or it would start firing missiles. Like literally across the map, and all you see is a stream of just like these anti-air missiles just flooding across the map. As long as you had line of sight, and it was like that's broken. Like there's no difficulty anymore for like having the aircraft carrier have real world values. So that was one of the things where we were just like, okay, we're gonna have to gamify this a little bit. We're gonna have to like cut down some of their ranges and make it more reasonable, so that things are a little bit more close quarters. And things like the anti-air missiles will obviously have a higher range than like the Sea Whiz and whatnot. But it's one of those things where like we're just kind of looking at okay, what's realistic in terms of their ranges, but also what makes the gameplay still engaging, it's still exciting, you still have close quarters combat going on, where like a bird swarm could be hiding behind a building, and then they just swarm your carrier from behind the building because they're using the building as line of sight blockage. So those kind of things. Um, let's see. So yeah, that for Grand Major Tarkin, I'm calling Tarkin. For Tarkin's question, yeah, that's basically a major goal, and then that's another reason why we put off the factions. Is I felt like if we put them in previously, we would do them a disservice in 1.3 by not being able to allocate enough time to them. I feel like we need to basically just kind of focus on them in their own after co-op, going into like 1.4 with the campaign, so we can so that way you guys have the co-op, you have all the content built up to it, so now we can just kind of go off to our corner and just focus on it for like 3 to 6 months and just make sure that what we do is a high quality. you know we do a lot of good bug testing, we do some private testing, and then we push it out there, because I imagine each faction is going to take easily a month, because like there's a lot of art you guys didn't see for the factions where they were like they had custom vehicles, they had custom buildings, they had custom units, like they were a full on sub faction that operated in the world. And for the police, they were mobile and they were built around like command vehicles, and like what you would basically see like in a bank robbery almost, where they'd have like those little like command trucks, and they'd have like a lot of makeshift vehicles that they've converted over to do dual purposes, like an ambulance that deploys to basically be like a triage center, and that kind of stuff for healing their units and building like the medic units and whatnot. So those are all things that we were looking at from a conceptual standpoint, where it was like, this is going to take us months, so we need to like focus our 5 people on just getting the Doctrine and the CERC stuff done, because that's going to take a while on its own, and then hit upon them in their own paths for the campaign, but at the same time, so we can add more volume, more range and opportunities in this pandemic. So, like, obviously, this is one of those situations where, like, quote unquote, we're done pushing features to pandemic after 1.3, but not really. Psychs, because you figure when the campaign comes, well, they'll trickle in to that in terms of basically like, okay, now we're going to basically add in these new groups so you can turn off and turn on. Um, let's see, what else do we have here? So for Terminal's question, that is a goal. Well, we have to figure out how that works. That's part of like where she's talking about the beginning of The Last of Us. If you listen to my earliest AMAs about the factions, that was their initial purpose, was the immersion of the world deteriorating for the police. So so basically that's something that's like I hold true to in terms of basically like the question we got earlier about what is my goal for the year. It's a simulation. So like you're off in the corner, you're the military. You can interact with the people, or you can sit off and fuck off on your carrier and take a small little like island and just build, and then come in and only do raids. But during all of that, the idea is we're still running those simulations of the civilians and the police, and that the police are trying to maintain order, and they're slowly but surely losing out to Chelsea. So like Resident Evil Apocalypse, with the police scene of like them trying to set up barricades and trying to maintain some amount of normalcy. That's the goal for the police, and that's another reason why I was like, I'd rather wait till all these systems are in here and the CERC are finalized and everything else is finalized before I go and I add in that extra layer of complexity of like, okay, now we have like a police faction that's almost role playing for the first 20 minutes of their existence, and then from there they roll a personality, and then that personality for the rest of the game. Whereas like the first 10 to 20 minutes of the police are just a preset scenario of like Raccoon City, for an example, where it's like they're fitting a role of like, these are the police stations, these are where the police are, they're gonna go out, they're gonna try and stop it, they're gonna try and help people, whatever, and then slowly but surely it deteriorates over the 10 20 minutes or so, because obviously the game is faster paced in terms of the fast forwarding system of like, we're not one to one in terms of time sync. Theoretically, you could change the time sync and custom game options to make it to where a full day is a day, or a quarter or a half. We do give you guys those options for simulation reasons of like role playing. But it's one of those things where like I don't think it's really going to have that much purpose until we have all of those subsystems running at the same time. So it feels like a more cohesive, immersive experience. in terms of basically how everything comes together. Um, let's see. So for K41's question about a form of chaos, right now that's in there in terms of basically civilians hating you. Because I've been seeing a lot of like Steam posts and Discord posts of people not understanding why civilians hate your guts. Is that you figure right now there's a system in the game where if you constantly allow incursions into your zone, they hate you. Because they're like, you're leaving us to die. What are you doing? Why are you here? You know what I mean? So the idea is that you have to act very quickly to basically either quarantine off the areas that are going to hate you so information doesn't spread. Because we actually have a information. Again, this is one of those things where we don't have a really good tutorial. So there's so many subsystems in the game that people don't understand that all these systems are going on behind the scenes. Where like the idea is each zone talks to each other. So if an area is quote unquote lost, Chelsea's taken it, quarantine it out, build walls, stop the groups from being able to communicate to each other, and Group A will stop hating you because Group B can't tell them how much you suck for leaving everyone to die via word of mouth. So, like, that's an example of a system where it's like, okay, like, if you quarantine off the wall, the zones, and you treat it like real life, where it's like, okay, these people are dead. Like the Dark Zone. There's nothing we could do. They're dead. So you quarantine it off, you close it off. That's Chelsea. That's her ground zero. You build layers of walls. You basically like kind of build like a fortress. Again, it's basically the zones that can only physically like connect to each other will still talk to each other. So then that way you'll be able to limit how much bad PR you get almost via by doing evacuations and by giving civilian groups money. You'll be able to turn that tide in terms of keeping a positive balance. And then another aspect of that is the martial law, where like if there are areas of the map where you think you can retake it in time, you can declare martial law, and that essentially will reduce the rate at which infection spreads in that zone. So, martial law will do it for like I think it's like 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. and that will basically like give you between that time during the night to figure out what you're going to do. Full martial law will have a higher penalty, but it will give you the full extent until you turn off martial law in that zone to basically do it, and it will slow down the infection. Like it slows down the infection by almost up to 50%. So like if there's ever an incursion in your zone and you have a not dynamic if you have a civilian administration structure in that zone, put it on martial law, and you'll notice that dynamically, passively, they tick slower in terms of them spreading. So that'll give you time to get a four-step, run over there, kill them all, and then turn off the martial law. Because the idea is less people are out. There's less. The spread is slower because Chelsea has to work harder to get to them. And yeah, you'll get some people that riot, and you'll get some people that disobey it, based off like 10% roughly disobey your orders, regardless when you do martial law. And those are the people that you'll see out on the street with like little picket fences, or they'll just kind of be like just standing around looking grumpy. And you figure at that point you can shoot them with the beanbag gun and tell them to fuck off. It's up to you. Or you can just leave them there. Or you can use the fire in the air ability, and that will scare them home. And they'll actually run back to a house and hide for a while. And that will also give you time to kind of figure out what are you going to do? How do you want to combat this? So, that's one option of handling, like the civilian rep kind of jumping down at times. Um, let's see. For Marines, you figure the idea is they're like between an assault and like a unit you can recruit from a dynamic civilian group. So they're like a really quick force that you can call in to essentially paradrop in that is meant to just kind of help you secure a zone. They're coming with the doctrinal changes in terms of basically being able to call in a scout car armed with them, and then being able to call in just a normal group of Marines that are just randomly generating weapons and appearances. Um, so Tevin has a question about 800 infected on the screen at any given time. Again, Terminal, that is something where basically you should give us that save file. Whenever there's a situation where you guys notice that the game deteriorates to the point where it's unplayable, we end up using those as benchmark files, where it's like, okay, let's look at it. Let's see what we can cut. Let's see what systems are running amok, and let's see if we could get some frames back to people. So in situations like with Terminal suggesting, where she had 800 infected on the screen at any given time, and she had a lot of people going on, I would recommend that you give us those save files so we could do benchmarking. We can profile those saves, and then in some cases, I mean, there have been people that give us save files, and we improve the performance by almost up to 50 to 60%, because these are situations that we couldn't reproduce, or things that we didn't know happen, and then it just happens for them, and it's like, oh, this is like the perfect storm in terms of basically us being able to resolve the issue. Um, oh, you know what? Let me get Airtaker's question because he's been waiting forever. So, Airtaker, if you're still alive, I invited you to speak.
Would it be possible to have two different endings like in a campaign? I do understand it's a bit far away from it. Could imagine two
Oh,
endings where they
huh.
like do really well in their campaign, they give you a really good ending and a really bad ending. So sort of like a neutral about.
Hmm. So, when when I was talking to my writer about this, he we did have a bad ending, and it was one of those things where you figure, I don't want to get into how many spoilers, but I feel like at this point it's gonna be more like StarCraft, where it's gonna be a linear story, and I don't know, because you figure we always plan for the campaign to be a linear story, more like StarCraft Wings of Liberty, where there's a start, a middle, and an end, and you're just basically the architect of getting to that point, if that makes any sense. We don't really have any plans to kind of make it to where it's a choose your own adventure. It's still like XCOM, where it's like, okay, well, I guess XCOM you can lose, but ideally they want you to win in XCOM because they have that winning cutscene, whatever. But yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like we don't really have any plan to do that. It's just a linear story, like Start Wings of Liberty, and Wings of Liberty, and is the biggest game we're looking at for reference in terms of, yeah. Okay, so let's see what else we got here. Okay. Will the campaign have a feature of replayability? You mean like Company Heroes 1 replay? Where you can replay it like a movie? Dumb Brick? I think that's what he means. Okay, well I'll, oh, so this is kind of like a symptom of basically being able to add co-op. Is one of the things that we get by adding co-op is a replay system. Because for whatever reason, the Unreal Engine doesn't support replays and replaying like what goes on in a map unless you have co-op support, like multiplayer support in a game like Fortnite. So I don't know. I know it's planned for when you're playing skirmishes or multiplayer, because that's what I love Company Heroes. I always wanted to have a replay system in this game for just a machinima, or just people having fun to want to go back and watch their battles. When it comes to the campaign, there were no plans for that, because at this time we don't even know if we're gonna make the campaign co-op. We have to, when we get to that point, we have to go back over the old game design docs, look at what people have been saying, look at how the game has progressed, and then make adjustments and alterations up to just starting it. So I don't have an answer for that one yet. Um, let's see. Rebuilding to reform ground. So, for the question about removing buildings, I'm assuming you're talking about the static structures on the world. Um, we don't have any plans to remove any of the buildings in the game, based off of just generally yeah, that's just one of those things where it's we don't really have any plans for that yet in terms of being able to remove entire structures. The idea is you kind of have to conform and work with what's there. Landscape deformation is something that we want to look into long term. We experimented and dabbled with it a little bit, but we would need to allocate more resources into it. And then our biggest concern was pathfinding, in terms of basically making sure that still accurately works. So let me get back to you on those, because I don't have a conclusive answer on deformation and like being able to but building removing. I don't think we're ever gonna add that. Um, I see the world as like more of like you can damage the structures and the skyscrapers and everything else going into like us adding more destruction to the world and surface level destruction, but I don't see us as being able to add the ability to remove entire structures, buildings. Let's see. Are there going to be infected builders in Cepheus Protocol? Yes. So that will be a change that you guys are going to see where they'll get their own sort of drone unit. The way that we did it right now was kind of like, how can I, like you figure it was kind of like a compromise. They just kind of spread passively. Something that we have to push going into making the infected playable is essentially making it to where they actually have units that have to get sent out to build, just for sake of balance. Otherwise, that's going to be really, really annoying if when you're playing against when you're playing as like the infected or whatever, like you can just plop things down everywhere. Then you're playing against CERC. If you ever add PvP long term, just how annoying that could be. So it's like one of those things where like we want to push, like we have concepts for them, but it's more so just having the budget and the time to focus on the infected and making them more fleshed out from like a playable standpoint. I feel right now it's serviceable, but it's not the final like approach to it. We're going to be basically like ironing that out in terms of infected builders. Um, so when it comes to building garrisoning, my plans for that are to keep it to where a surface level where you can put them on the buildings and adding repelling and adding ways for the units to get up and down structures. Um, when it came to the interior of structures, time and time again, I sat there and looked at it, and I was like, I don't know if this would be fun, because you figure the only way of we'd have to simulate combat inside the buildings if infected entered them, and then B, if your units are inside of a building like in Company Heroes, infected would have to melee the structure to kill the people inside, which looks silly. So it was like one of those things where it's like, to me, the furthest that I wanted to take garrisoning was to basically just make it to where they can just go up and down the structures without helicopters, like adding in some kind of repelling system. And that's something we're going to be looking at when we get closer to doing the AI on the 1.3 roadmap right before co-op. One of the last things we have to do is do a revamp of just all the AI in the game, give the infected more strategies, give the CERC a little bit more intelligent of an AI. At that time, look at maybe the vehicles, and that's part of it as well. Is like, okay, like let's add a repelling system. Let's add it to where if you click on a building, they'll shoot a gun up there, and then they'll be able to basically like climb up it essentially. But that's how I see garrisoning at this point, where it's like just the ability to get on top of structures and the ability for infected to be able to get on top of structures. Um, let's see. Yeah, Grandma Tarkin, you're absolutely right. And that's the goal of the simulation, is slowing down the infection in the first 20 to 30 minutes, roughly. Because you figure, now Chelsea isn't just fighting you, she's fighting the civilians, she's fighting Pierce. And then later on, she fights Natalie when she emerges. So it's like a staggered faction evolution, growth, creation. Where the idea is the same way dynamic civilians pop up, the police would be there from get-go, and then, they're fighting the infected, and then that segues into the rest. Um, let's see. Let me just scroll down. Yes, you're right, Terminal. You're absolutely correct. That was the third thing, was the perception system. Was there the third most expensive thing was the hearing and seeing of AI. I don't know how I breezed over that. So yeah, you're correct. I remember us telling you that we discovered a bug in your save file where somehow standard infected were seeing their brethren and multiplying the cost of the perception system, which is why your save file was ballooning in performance. And then that was fixed with that the next experimental, essentially. It still has to be rolled out to normal branch, but we're waiting until the carrier is a little more feature complete before we shove that out there. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's any more questions. So for Joka, I'm sorry if I butcher your name. But basically, for your question about the AC 130, that is earmarked for the doctrinal and the CERC changes, where I'm going to be making a list with the boys, and we're going to be basically making a list of auditing every aspect of CERC and the doctrines and the UI and the UX, because we figure we want to be done with CERC from like a base standpoint and like make sure everyone's happy in terms of their implementation. So the AC 130 is going to get a facelift. The AC 130 is going to get like every aspect of the game when it comes to CERC is going to be altered or changed in some shape, manner, or form after the Abrams. Because I know that's what everyone's really super excited about. So like helicopters are getting weapons. You know, you're getting new vehicles that support different play styles. You're getting new visual effects with Niagara for every sort of airstrike. So the strafing run with the Thunderbolt actually is a strafing run with the Thunderbolt. You know, it's completely new VFX. A new phosphorus gas, phosphorus one thing for that. A new AC 130, like effects. And then one of the biggest things we wanted to do was be able to have it to where you set a zone for the AC 130, but then you can control the guns from the AC 130 like Call of Duty 4. So that's one of the biggest things that we wanted to do, where like it circles and then you can zoom in and see it from there. And that has been on our game design doc for the longest. And it's something that we're going to implement in terms of basically being able to control like the guns and being like with Imagine Call of Duty 4, and that's what we want to do. So that way you can basically see your units as strobes, and then you can see like, oh, I don't want to shoot there. I want to shoot here, here, and there to cover their advance. Then you press and then basically it'd be like the operator. You press the key, it jumps you back to RTS. You jump a key, it'll jump you into basically controlling the AC-130. And that is a big thing of the CERC and Doctrine thing, where it's like the CERC and Doctrine thing is massive because it's just there's so many aspects where it's like aspects of gameplay are lacking. Like people don't understand how to use the hand scanner. They don't have a meaningful uses in gameplay right now. It's the same thing for the mines. It's the same thing for some of the turrets, where they're almost like pea shooters to pissing off a bear. It's little things here and there that we've kind of noticed. It was great when the gameplay was simple and the unit count was smaller, but as the game has evolved and changed, those aspects of CERC need to evolve and change as well. In terms of like, we made the change to make the doctrine tree freeform instead of like you choose one section and then you're locked into it for the rest of the game. Because of that, there are growing pains in terms of like certain aspects of it are so goddamn OP combined with other aspects where it's like we need to like reshuffle the doctrine tree, add some more doctrines, and just kind of like buff it up a little bit in terms of like the weapon supports and like different things that get added to it, just to kind of give you more progression instead of everything just being unlocked in the first hour and then you never use it ever again. Um, so yeah, the Circ doctrinal change is huge. That's why it's like once this carrier thing is over, it's going to be crazy in terms of the amount of stuff that's going to be coming in going into like February. Because at this point, yeah, we're pretty much at the end of January. Is that I would argue around the middle of February is when the Abrams would come in, roughly, and then you figure at that point because the first thing we're going to push is the Abrams and destruction of the world, and then from there we're going to branch out to other aspects of the doctrine changes. Because people have been so like steadfast, like dire for like the Abrams. So we're like, fuck it, we're gonna push that out first. We'll push out the destruction, and then at that point, we're gonna basically just work on, getting the other aspects in and auditing every section. Because there have been some criticisms about the UI that we want to address. So we'll have a thread, we'll have an announcement, where we kind of put up a ping. We're like, okay, what do you guys feel about the UI that is still lacking? And we've had some people create threads, but I need to go back to those at that point, engage with those people, get them on Discord, get them in calls, and figure out like what do you hate still about the UI? What doesn't feel, like like consistent to you? So then that way we can just kind of put that debate to bed. Um, let's see what Terminal said. When it comes to other Navy ships, I don't have an answer for any other new ships until we get the Coast Guard, not Coast Guard, fucking hovercraft, and the aircraft carrier in. Those are our technical tests. Those are how expensive are they? How realistic can we make the movement? Do we feel that we can reliably put other ships in? Because you figure we got to a point in the last month where like we want to do Air Force. So in our mind, before we even consider doing more Navy ships after the Air Force, after the carrier and the hovercraft, we're going to be doing the Air Force, which is like I don't even have a TVA for that, but I know that's why we're adding the Air Force Corps. That's why we're moving over the carrier and the Little Bird and all the other units to an Air Force doctrinal tree, and we're adding the weapon upgrades and all the other research for them under that section because we're preparing the stage for jets and stuff like that. But for right now, I don't have an answer for that. I'd like to do it, but we want to see just how this first step goes in terms of like water simulation and everything else. Um, so I can't see his name fully. Just, for some reason, it's abbreviating your name as J, but it's the person with the picture from the guy from Monsters Inc. I guess it's streamer mode on Discord. So bear with me. I can't say your full name, but oh, just another Joe. And he asks, is there work being done on making the evac system less buggy? Civilians just milling around, civilian groups not spawning, helis just sitting on the pad without loading, civilian administration not recognizing that a helipad has been set up in its zone. So we did some changes. That was another reason why the patch was held. Is we got some reviews lately from the Splattercat coverage, and then just generally people on submitting their save files on Steam and Discord, where we were investigating issues of those. Far as I know, we did resolve the ones that were submitted to us. Um, I feel like you should, after tonight's build, after I go offline and I push it out, I would recommend that you test it again and let us know if you're still running into issues. And if you are, make a thread, tag me, and be like, hey, it's still a thing. Here's my save file. This is what's going on. This is really frustrating. Can you fix this? And then that way we can look at the exact situation and fix it if it's still an issue. But as far as I know, based off of me doing it and off of Derek doing it, it's fixed for this the implement the cases that were submitted to us for it, because you figure every instance is different. So again, if you run into it, let us know, submit it, we will look into it, and then we'll give you a build to test likely to see, if we fixed it or not. And then if not, we'll work with you to resolve it. Um, let's see. Is it later possible to rescale the doctrine tree? I don't know what that means by reskilling the doctrine tree. So see if you can elaborate on that question, and then I'll come back to it. Can we have the Coast Guard skin for the Black Hawks? No, I don't feel like getting sued by the U.S. government. I'm pretty sure we can't do that, but you can do it as a mod. I'm pretty sure we can't just put Coast Guard on there. It's the same reason why we can't put CDC or whatever. Do we? I thought we changed the name slightly. Where is that unit? I'm gonna have to go look for that. I'm pretty sure we removed those or we renamed them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was removed and we changed the name. We're not supposed to use one-to-one names of trademarks. Um, let's see. What other questions do we have? No one's raising their hand. What time is it? All right, we'll go for another 10 to 20 minutes if people have questions. So we can just kind of start to wrap this up. Let me check the YouTube chat. Someone is saying in the YouTube chat that we need better marketing. I wonder how you either fund the development of the game because nobody knows about this game. I agree with you. It's one of those things where marketing and getting the game out for your word of mouth has always been very hard for us. We've basically really just kind of tried to contact influencers on YouTube and Twitch to play the game. But realistically, we fund the game from ourselves. We fund it based off of revenue from the game. Some months is negative, so we work with what we have and we work day jobs. So it's one of those things where it's like I feel like until we get co-op and the influencers have a bigger incentive to play the game and cover it, we're always gonna be just a niche game. You know, it's one of those things where it's just because we don't have the money and to basically put that much into marketing. Unless someone knows like some hack to get people to basically know about your game with like a zero budget. It's one of those things where it's like we're working within our means of all the money just going strictly towards development. You know, going to the developers, going to like just getting what we can get in on a monthly basis alongside everyone's schedules and just balancing it out. Like for instance, Michael's at working at Best Buy right now, so you figure that's why he's not at the AMAs anymore because you figure people have the schedules changed and just he's the animation lead, but he also balances out with his day job. So it's like one of those things where it's like it's a given. It's a constant give and pull. Sometimes like, oh, and that sometimes is also what affects our deadlines. Like I think I was explaining to that someone on Steam. I was like, arguing with someone on the forums. I think Terminal picked up on it for our deadlines. He or she was getting really mad that sometimes we push deadlines back or we say something's coming and then it doesn't come on that day. And it's like at the end of the day, we say something's coming with in good faith that it's going to come in that day, but then things happen like bugs or like for instance, someone submits a save file and then everything has to stop because we're like, wait, this is critical. We have to fix this before we add new features in because we only have two programmers, two modelers, two level designers, like two they do the same role, and then one animator, and then one person that basically just kind of works on and off for character modeling, like barely a couple days a week. So it's one of those things where it's like it's constantly just kind of rotating in terms of everyone's schedules. Um, but I think that's the one biggest thing I was trying to instill in that person is patience. But in this case, for the marketing, is just same thing for me, patience to basically just kind of get the game the time it needs to grow. And in a way, I kind of don't want the game to get too big, like Pal World or like um, Company Heroes, until it has the time to incubate with a smaller community so we can work out the kinks. If that almost makes more sense and the issues, so more people can be happy with the game from an initial standpoint. Because in early access, I mean, I'm the game director. I'm not going to bullshit anyone. There are issues. It's not a perfect game, but it's going to get there over time and hard work. And it's like it's going to have its time to shine. If that makes any sense as we slowly but surely just kind of work on it on a daily basis and just keep ironing out the imperfections and revising our game design when it's like this doesn't work, that doesn't work, or this sounded great on paper but it didn't work in implementation, or just working with the community like the terminal suggested earlier for like your repairable fucking sandbags, where it's like those kind of things where it's like I tend to focus more on like the bigger overhead systems and like those small things are like quality of life changes that make sense, but they come at the end almost for me from a mental standpoint where it's like absolutely critical, but I want to kind of get these big light items in and then go back and just iron out the kinks and do the quality of life and then do the co-op, push it, and then from there use some of that money to maybe like get some more marketing going like what he's suggesting. Um, Let me see if there's any questions. Oh yeah, Liuch is a G. I love Kokias. From yeah, no, I fucking love Kokias. Favorite anime ever. Let's see. Uh, well, that's the biggest thing is that you figure, and that's I think that's part of being aware of where the game is, not self-deluding yourself, is that we have a lot to work on, and we have a lot to improve. Like there was a guy, I think I mentioned this last week in Spider-Cat's video, where he was asking like the new game, uh, the new game like introduction is shit. It's terrible. Like he didn't know what to do. He didn't know what the bird was, the little sound that was chirping at him, whatever. To tell him about news notifications, he didn't know what that was. He stopped playing the game because he couldn't figure out what that sound was. And it was like one of those things where it was just kind of like, okay. It's one of those things where we want to get to the end of 1.3 and then do a tutorial that's more representative of the gameplay that we have. Because the new player introduction, if you're not on Discord or you don't ask a bunch of questions on Steam or you don't research something on YouTube, you're lost at times. Because the game has gotten very complicated very quickly. And there's a lot of systems involved. Like there are systems in today that you guys didn't even know about, like the spreading of information, where it's like that's not conveyed anywhere. That's just kind of like you have to learn it the hard way almost. By like, wait, if I wall off these sections and experiment, boom, who's pinging me? Okay. Oh, you pinged me too. Why is it pinging so many times? Okay, so Joka asked the question of, I mean, like if you skill it this way and later you think, nah, that's not my playstyle. Your playthrough is the rest of the game like this, and you must start a new game or you can reskill. You lose the ability and vehicles from the branch of the three that you skilled before and can skill now the other branch. Huh. I'm not sure about that because you figure the idea was intentionality of like if you if you spec into a tree and it wasn't what you wanted, or it's not effective enough, you might need it later on, based off of how the game devolves. So our standpoint from that was, in a way, it's almost like learning through repetition, or like the Hitman games, the failure of like, okay, I didn't need that. That's not what I needed right now. So you learn the hard way of like, okay, this is the ideal tree based off of my play style, and then I should unlock these additional things as you go along for like happenstance situations, for like, oh, the Juggernaut's coming, so I should probably get the Javelin, because I have a lot of infantry. So I don't. Is there? I mean, I don't think. Yeah, I'm on the fence about reallocating skill points because I feel like it's like Supreme Commander when it comes to like their research, where it's like you're locked in, you unlock it, and then you go on to the next thing. And if you got something you didn't need, then you have to pay the time investment of being able to farm out the XP to get to the next one. And I think that's fine. But I mean, you figure I'm kind of that's the way it's always kind of been, and I've used to it from playing Supreme Commander and a bunch of other games. So like, I feel like it's another layer of difficulty to the game, where it's like your choices have consequences. Like, yeah, sure, you can just go out there and grind and basically get some more points, but choosing the wrong thing, even in Company Heroes, should have a penalty where it's like, okay, you have to bide your time now. You have to like sacrifice some units and play the game harder just to kind of like till you can get that next doctrine for the striker to save the day, kind of deal. Because like, they threw a curveball at you and now they're sending these kind of units at you. Um, for right now, it's gonna stay the way it is. But you figure mods could always change it. You figure it's one of those things where it's like we want to add a modding ecosystem, 1.4 and beyond after we do the campaign and everything else. So you figure I think that's an important thing of being able to kind of give people the way where it's like from a developer standpoint, I wouldn't see that changing. But from a modding standpoint, we'll add the back end to be able to have people turn that off long term if that's what people want. Um, any other questions before we basically wrap it up? I think Derivar got eaten or like fought to death by a kangaroo. Probably the kangaroo part. Australia is wild. Anyway, indeed. Oh, vultures. Well, we do have it on the long term to add more flying enemies that are larger. That can counter. They're just more heavily armored, and they're a direct anti-air counter, not the birds, but they're more counter at ground. But again, they have some mixed roles. But like that's something that we are talking about. Is like something like the Zerg suicide unit from like when they just kind of charge into something and try and explode into it. The Scourge, yeah, I'm having a brain fart. But that was something that basically we're looking at, where it's like we need to add more utility and more units to the infected to be able to kind of keep the CERC on their toes, because they have numbers. They can replace their units, so it's like they're going to play very closely to the Zerg ultimately when it comes down to their final approach. Um, Let me see. Any other questions? I'm surprised no one's raising their hand to ask voice questions today. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing, Grand Moff Tarkin, is getting the point to where the Circ are done, so we can focus all our efforts on the infected. Because after 1.4, going into like beyond, that's what we have to do. Is basically we have to look at the infected. We've done Circ. They're done. Like they're balanced. They play great. Now we need to add that kind of like cross, like being able to add perfect counters to the infected in terms of like certain units that have had to do a lot of roles, like the Juggernaut, like the Leviathan, like the Worms, will become more like direct in terms of what they do. Like they'll still be like good against certain things, but you'll get units that are specialists in certain roles. Like, Chelsea's elite guard for like assassinating and hunting down units. Kind of being like that terror that you're just kind of afraid of at night. Just to kind of put some fear in players, where it's like if you're going out at night, her guards will hunt you. And that kind of thing. And they're stronger than a Juggernaut. They take more damage than the Juggernaut, and they're fast. So it's like looking at, now that the Circ has all these toys, how do we accurately give the infected the right counterbalance to what they have? Um, Gotta make them sweaty. Gotta make you think it's the Dark Souls of RTS games, where literally you can have a team running through, and if one guy is a straggler, he's dead. Because it's one of those things where it's like I really am gonna be pushing the what do they call the spitters to act like velociraptors. I've been talking about this forever, and I'm gonna have my way in terms of basically adding in personalities and AI to them, where they fuck with you, and they basically they're indirect in terms of how they attack you, and they're more strategic in terms of like coming at you at different angles. Because yeah, this is not Blubber. What is that from? The Blob. Yeah, I love Left 4 Dead Versus, where like you'd have the people that play as the hunter, and they're like so strategic in terms of like how everyone would plan it out. Tactical nukes are not a plan in any capacity. The end game scenario when the game is done is to basically just nuke the map. So if the carrier dies, going into like the future when we have more time to polish it, we're just gonna play a nuke. There's gonna be a warning sound, and that's gonna be you fucked up. Game's over. Reload your save. But we never are planning on adding nukes, because the idea of CERC is that if you fail, then they nuke. Or realistically, in this world, they use a thermobatic bomb and not a nuke, because nuke would bring too much contagion. So they use a thermobatic bomb, and the idea is that it's not as bad for the environment and long-term population. So essentially, that is the thing. But yeah, so essentially, yeah. Let's see. I hope Derivar is okay over there. Let me check YouTube. I keep hearing that more and more about people wanting a mode without zero, patient zero. And the effect is spread more like a zombie virus instead of all the weird elite guards and more unity for space. I don't know. I mean, you figure the entire game has been built from a standpoint of around patient zero. And we've talked about this on and off. I think it's brought up in multiple AMAs. And I just don't know how many people actually want a mode without patient zero, and they just want Resident Evil Apocalypse, where it's just literally just standard infected, CERC, and that's it. And no special infected. Or you can just customize it and turn off the special infected, but you can turn off patient zero as well. I'm not sure, because fundamentally the entire game has been built around her. She's the one that spreads and starts the virus. Um, what do you guys think of the channel? about having a custom game option long term, about turning off Chelsea and making it to where instead there's like a patient zero of like an infected. He starts it, and then from there it just goes like a wildfire. Like there's no patient zero per se or lieutenant. It's just Philip fit into a sandwich, and then he's just a normal person, but he doesn't get like mutated or whatever. He just starts infecting everyone. I think that's how like Project Zomboid and like all those other games work, like World War Z, where it's like one person that gets, or like Left 4 Dead works that way, the same thing, where it's like No Mercy Hospital is where it started. So like, I don't know. I would have to start a poll, but like you figure it's one of those things where I don't think. Uh, to think about it this way, right? If we go and we do that, that diverts away probably weeks minimum of resources away from what we already have on the roadmap. So if I were to do something like that, that would be like something we would do auxiliary after we're caught up and everything's said and done and the co-op is in and we're just doing it for shits and giggles. Just to kind of add another alternate play scenario, because like the custom game options are going to be tweaked. They're going to be improved upon. There's going to be a lot more setting, a lot more tabs, so you can customize it to your whims of health and speed, and make the game how you want it to play. And that could be very much a part of it. But it's one of those things where it's like I don't think right now is the time and place to push that just yet, based off of the time and resources that would go into it. But it's not a bad idea. It's just it's like some people on the Steam forums just give us some time to bake and to get the systems in that are already planned. And then when things calm down and we're caught up, why the hell not? In terms of basically as like an auxiliary way of playing the game. I like giving people more ways to play. My own intents and purposes, Cepheus Protocol is a sandbox. And we're just giving you a scenario and a world, and then it's up to you to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Um, let's see. Oh, looks like Tom has his question, his hand raised. What's up, Tom?
What's up?
Hello. What's your question?
Well, how about the type of new effect that you guys are planning on? We already know about the effect, but I wonder what other type of effect that's going to be added into the game. Like what you're planning on adding them in.
Oh, so realistically, when it comes down to it, we're going to attempt to get in some new infected around the time we do the AI card. If that doesn't work out, then it would be pushed back until roughly around the campaign, around 1.4, where at the very least, we're planning a Chimera Dog, Chelsea's Elite Guard.
Rare dog.
Yeah, it's basically like, think of the White Spikes as inspiration, but they're more countered.
Oh.
Yeah, like from Tomorrow Wars, but they're more geared towards the counter towards the Abrams, and like they're a really fast dog that can run up hills, like run up buildings and whatnot is the idea, and they're
Yeah,
larger.
outrun the dog.
Yeah, so like something that basically can counter, pretty much all your heavy armor, and they're fast. Um, so we're looking at the white spikes for inspiration for a chimera type dog. Then we're looking at a infected sperm whale for transporting over the sea. We're looking at some kind of like anti-air suicide unit. Then we're also looking at the elite guard. And then at that point, we're going to regroup, do an inventory, and figure out just where the infected feel like they're lacking. Oh, and then an engineer unit. And then if we're talking about infection structures, we're looking at traps and an infection growth, where the infection growth will give the infected line of sight. So if you ever seen Stranger Things, we want to go back
I
to the procedural growing of the
I
infected
think
growth.
I've seen Stranger Things. I played Far Cry 6 that has one of those events called Stranger Things.
Yeah, so basically we used to have it in the game, but it was blowing up people's it's computers because of the way we implemented it. So we had to take it out. But here, let me pull you down. I'll explain it more in detail. But basically, it's something that we were waiting until technology catches up. We believe that it's where it needs to be in 5.2, 5.3 of the engine of procedural generation, is that we want to add a system where basically we can dynamically grow the infection on the buildings and have them have health bars and have them have gameplay characteristics, but do it in a limited fashion to where we can make the map kind of slowly change to a hellscape. But at the same time, there will be traps and other things that come up that augment defense towers that they already have, where you have to pay attention to your unit's placement because then basically like they'll damage your units. So like we have like little spike traps and little things like that that we were looking at and planning for. Let me post one of the concepts. Actually, I can find that and I can post it. Where it's like those are things that we're going to be looking at for the AI section where it's like we're gonna be getting some of the model whatever. So I don't plan on everything making the cut because some of the character modeling and finding the right character models and having the budget, some of it might just go on and they might be trickled in going into basically beyond for the campaign where it's like, okay, we just got this new asset, it's going to be in pandemic first, and then because that's when you guys would experience it, and then in campaign it'll have its formal introduction via like how Doom does it where it's like a new enemy type. It's like, aha, this is my abilities, I'm going to fight you now. You know how they do like new enemy types in video games. So that's generally the direction we're going in. But yeah, there's a whole list, and it's basically at this point, it's just order of operations. Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Standalone towers and standalone lights. So what do you mean by standalone towers? Standalone lights, we're still terrified of adding dynamic lights into the world. Because the Unreal Engine hasn't found, we don't have a good, nice way of faking lighting just yet. So it's like one of those things where like we could do emissives, but then it's like that wouldn't really look very good. So we're kind of like holding off until either Epic introduces some new alien technology again like nanite for lighting, or we have the time to do more R&D. When it comes to standalone towers, elaborate on that terminal, and we'll come back to that. Walkways on walls are coming. Whoever has the Starfield logo, I can't see your full name because Twitch, the stupid streamer mode, is that basically that is the battlements on the CERC Doctrine revamp, where by doing the carrier, during recent like R&D, we found a way of basically reliably doing a movement system off the navigation for being able to like move characters on top of an object. So battlements like are coming. That's just one of the things where like we're gonna be having where it's like a tier 3 wall where you can basically add like a section where you can garrison units and you can move them along the walls. So if there's enemies coming, they can run down the wall and go to another section to defend it. So you don't have to be completely dependent on guard towers. What did Terminal say? Did she ever elaborate? Uh, I don't see standalone towers. I'm not understanding. Sorry, I'm not understanding what that means. Terminal was talking about the towers we already have. What towers exactly? Just tell me the name of the structure. Are you talking about the light towers? Are you talking about the medium? Are you talking so you're talking about the medium tower. The Atlas. Oh, that one. If we added a spotlight, we would have to add a radial like limit in terms of how close you can build them to each other. So that's the thing though. If we start adding lights, then we have to start adding limits in terms of how close they can be. That's why we're like, no. At least for the time being, until we can find a better way of doing it. Um, yeah, sorry. Walkways and towers attached to walls coming in for you. Oh, that's nice. I mean, even though we said that we're doing the Abrams next month, but all right. Anyway, moving on. Let's see. Yeah, well, we did set a conclusive deadline for it. I mean, I'm not even gonna debate with you on this. Like, we have the model. It's next on the roadmap. It's coming when it comes. Next question. Okay, so for your question about the tunnels, that needs to be expanded upon when we go into the AI. So right now, the tunnels are basically meant as a fast travel system. Um, and essentially, they're meant to be used as like, okay, the Leviathan will connect provinces, they'll guard those tunnels, and then the standard infected are supposed to use those to get around the special infected, X, Y, and Z. And it's one of those things where like you don't see enough of it because then the standard infected and just in general, the infected get so caught up fighting normal warfare that they don't do it enough to actually transport their units from point A to point B to point C. So the idea is it's not like the Nihilist worm. It's more of like the infected build units, garrison them there. Well, because the Nihilist worm spawns unique units. This is more of a transport network, like the GLA tunnels from Command and Conquer Zero Hour, or more like the tunnel network from Starship Troopers, where it's like they use it to kind of get around the map. So that's the idea of the bunker buster is being able to collapse networks, and I think that's something that we need to do better on, in terms of basically improving upon the feedback that we give the people in terms of how that works, but at the same time improving the reliability of like, oh, there actually are infected using these tunnels, and then giving players visual feedback that they are using the tunnels, but at the same time giving people warnings the tunnels are being created. Like even just a small little sound effect that you would hear under the ground, something to give some kind of visual indicator. So you don't always have to have the scanners running, and you can just kind of hear some ambient sound, like when you're playing Company Heroes and you can hear tanks in the fog of war. You don't have to have a unit to know they're there. You can just hear them ambiently in the map, and you're like, oh shit, he's about to Panzer rush. Um, yeah, and audio is such an important aspect, and it's like one of those things where like we need to do a better pass of that. You're gonna get aspects of it with the CERC doctrinal changes, and then more will just kind of trickle out as I talk to the audio engineer and we have the budget to just kind of push. Because another big thing I want to do is just add more. I think Tarkin's the one that does it, but he does a lot of like audio mods for like announcers. We need to get more of those done for like when you're doing evacuations, when you're doing certain things in the world, and having audio feedback that relays, oh, you're purging a building. Loudspeakers are playing audio at that building about the purge. Propaganda. You're evacuating a zone. Well, then there's audio being played about like mandatory evacuation, and you don't have a choice. You have helicopters going on. The helicopters are basically playing like generic announcer dialogue about like what you do and the protocols and just things to fill the air to help the atmosphere. Well, they're not like mission critical right now, but it's something that we're kind of earmarking as we get to the end of just kind of ironing out all the kinks and everything, and just kind of allocate more of our budget to like, okay, now that everything's said and done, everything's finalized, things aren't changing anymore. Let's go ahead and let's go in and let's add in these automated systems. And at the same time, let's make it to where you can turn them off. Because I'm sure for some people they don't want to hear it. But for some people they do want to hear it. So it's giving them that choice. Yeah, no, and basically listening to your mods was what gave us the idea we needed to push that more. Where it was like, and there's been other people too in AMAs where they were like, when are you guys doing this? And it's like, it's a budget thing. It's a budget thing, and it's like, I want to wait until we get to co op to where everything's in, everything's final, everyone's happy with the flow, and then I'll go in and I'll allocate that time and money to basically get that audio done. Um, what are the technical limitations on maps? Is it possible to make them bigger and more populated? The islands are huge and have more pop than Calypso. It'd be interesting to have just a large city with some more sprawling suburbs on the edges. So, this is an excellent question. Give me 1 second. I gotta switch out my stupid headset battery and I will answer it. Give me like 5 seconds. The fun part of having a wireless headset. It dies in the most inconvenient times. So, the tech limitations are is that this is something we need to do better on. So like you figure some of this will change. It's like what I talked about earlier with the movement components for what Terminal mentioned about basically the perception, hearing, and seeing, and just like what's expensive in the game is that we need to basically just kind of keep pushing ourselves to optimize and find things that can be done better, things that are stock in the engine that need to be rewritten or simplified to get more efficiency out. Now, as it stands right now, when we add San Francisco North, at that point, that's going to be like, I don't think we're going to be able to basically push any more land masses until there's a major shift in terms of basically how we're doing optimization and how we're doing the gameplay in terms of more simulation and less of doing it live. Because the problem is that you figure we've gotten very comfortable of like just running things in real life. Like people are shooting down that street, they're actually shooting. They're actually running AI logic. They're actually like doing per second calculations of, oh, I gotta reload. But the problem is that puts a really great strain on your CPU, which is why you sometimes get low frame rates as it stands right now when you get into certain situations, because a lot is going on. Not just what's in your current battle, but what little Timmy is doing down the street. And we've attempted to slowly but surely curve that by adding in virtualization of units. And you saw that previously. We were talking about it like maybe like 6 months to a year ago, where there was a huge performance boost when we started pushing virtualization. And then when we did that, it was like, oh, this is great. This is adding so much to gameplay in terms of like performance stability. So it's one of those things where it's like we need to just kind of do a little bit better on the optimization. And then second, I'm going to show you guys San Francisco North. I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see just how large the landmass is. So you can get an idea of what's coming down the pipe. Ideally by the end of the year, because even if it's not textured, we'll put it out in a playable form for like opting in via like a beta opt-in, and then just kind of go from there. So let's see what this is. So for Terminal's question about the physics, that's a very good question. And it's one of those things where basically we're going to have to change that slightly going into the CERC stuff because you figure I don't think it's performant. It's not realistic enough to basically like use in gameplay. Like in Company of Heroes, you can run people over pretty easily. But in like our game, it's really, really hard to run people over. Like you almost have to go out of your way. And that was supposed to be a tenet of vehicle gameplay, and it just hasn't really worked out in terms of like you really have to work hard to do it. So it's one of those things where essentially we're gonna be looking into that because how we did it was an old capsule and it did like a swoop. We need to do like some more complicated velocity code and do more math to basically make it a little more accurate. Use the physics bodies instead of capsules and just kind of revamp that system to make it more efficient. So yeah, that is something that is on my list of CERC and Doctrine changes. That basically is like part of like that audit that I was telling you about, where like sometime next month we're gonna get together and we're gonna audit the CERC and the Doctrine, and basically figure out like, okay, what else needs to change? What else do we need to do to kind of get them to where like everything's working the way it should? Make a list, share the list, see if there's anything we're missing, execute. And that'll be alongside all the doctrines, like the Abrams and the other stuff that's coming. I which one's this? This is Cloverfield. Oh yeah, that was the idea of a Leviathan as some kind of hulking monstrosity that just kind of like is just terrifying and just kind of like it just causes chaos. Same thing with the Juggernaut, same thing with the Leviathan, where like we need to push those systems further. We need to push their AI, and we need to make them less contentious in terms of being frustrating. Because you figure the game was always envisioned in terms of like more of a Resident Evil type virus. And we took inspiration from Cloverfield, we took inspiration from Resident Evil, like Left 4 Dead. I mean, that's where the spinners and like the archetypes came from for Left 4 Dead. So it's about basically just kind of like we need to sell a kind of atmosphere and essentially just kind of push those systems further. But like, you figure like, yeah, I mean Cloverfield's awesome. I love that movie. And that's if you remember Cloverfield, that's also where we got the inspiration for the little guys. Like in Cloverfield, he spits out those monsters in the subways, and it infects that one girl, and then she like dies or whatever. Is that you figure like we got we part of the inspiration for Leviathan was Tremors and Cloverfield. And then basically, at the same time, it was also the fuck, what was it? Oh my god, I'm having a brain fart. God damn it, I can't think of it right now. But sorry, little guys, fuck, little guys were from the monsters that the Cloverfield monster spits out. Or like, wouldn't that be really cool if you were in an area where he physically can't reach, he'll spit those guys out. He'll use it to basically like overwhelm units, essentially. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's basically where his inspiration came from. Are there any? Where is that question? Oh, here it is. Are there any ideas for how tanks would die? Like if they get swarmed and infected by themselves, the zombies can break the tank, killing the crew, leaving it to be recrewed. Something like Company Heroes 2, where tanks were abandoned and fixed. So there's going to be an experimental about this, and we're gonna have to basically squeeze this in. Is that I want to make it to where tanks, if your vehicle is not exposed, it doesn't like. Basically, there'll be a damage filter. Because I want to make tanks more resilient, where like they can get stuck and immobilized. And this goes into, I think it was Terminal's questions earlier. We're not going to go into tank damage. Not yet. We're not going to go into vehicle damage just yet. I want to do it, but it's just not feasible based off the amount of time we have. But what I do want to do is immobilization, where units can basically get immobilized or stuck if they keep running over infected. And then from that point, you have to send out people to clear it. And the people inside that vehicle are stuck. If you degarrison them, well, they're going to die instantly. And the idea is I want to add, I want to push more of damage filters like in Company Heroes, where certain units just don't do anything. Like a standard infected won't damage an Abrams, but a Spitter or a Juggernaut will. But we're not going to do this until the AI is improved, the build orders are improved. So part of it will start in the CERC and doctrinal stuff, and then that will segue into basically the AI that comes next. Because then you figure at that point, we need to basically just kind of cement and improve that. So then that way at that point, they know this isn't working. Well, let's throw in standard infected. Let's block their path. Let's immobilize these vehicles if the player is stupid enough to just keep running us over, running us over, running us over. Because the idea is that we have a system in the game where every infected that you hit slows down the max speed of your vehicle. That's already in there. It's just because the vehicles do such a good job of swerving out of the way automatically, you never really kind of have it happen. So we kind of have to have it to where they'll try and swerve out, but they're not going to be because they avoid it like the devil right now because of RVO avoidance. So it's a system that never really kind of gets used. So we kind of have to find it where once vehicles don't turn on a dime anymore, it's going to happen more frequently. And then once that happens more frequently, then at that point, you'll start to run into situations where we're going to push, the vehicles, the damage filters, and having it to where vehicles can be immobilized, where the crew can have to evacuate the vehicle, if it runs out of gas, if it gets stuck, and then someone comes and they clear it out, but they can't get it out quick enough. Those kind of situations. Or you can just bring a Chinook and lift it out. So, yeah, that's something that we definitely want to push in that direction. Okay, we have a voice question, so let me invite Chad Thunder.
Yeah, hi. Sorry.
Hello.
I've been out of the loop for a minute, so I'm not sure if this question's good or not still, but I play a lot of Artie, and I was wondering if the Artie's gonna get more rounds, like a flechette round or a smoke round.
I think you were the one. Yeah, I think I saw that question. I've missed it. Let me. There's really not any plans to add more ammo types. We were just going to add we were going to add an anti-tank. We were going to add a mortar, and we were going to add an MLRS system. But when it came to more ammo types, That hadn't even come up yet. Tell you what, let me put that on the wish list, and then let me talk to the guys to see if there's something we can squeeze in, but no promises on that, okay?
I'll take what I get. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, because that is a good idea. Because again, we're looking at like we were doing a crowdsource internally of like looking up and thinking of ideas of like adding more ways of playing the game. And that's something that did actually come up internally is that no one actually brainstormed adding more more ammo types to the artillery to give you different like effects. So I'm gonna write that down, and then basically we'll see what we can do. But yeah, no promises. So let me put that down. Um, Okay, artillery, ammo, types. Boom, got it. Alright, let's see what else we got here. Okay, let's scroll through. So the carrier is going to get a bigger range. The current range is just kind of like us just kind of experimenting with like what it has right now. That's not the final version. Like, I'll tell you what, let me just put that down. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna change that before the build tonight. Because it actually needs to be about double the triple, and we've been putting that off because we've been stuck in just kind of in the trenches getting the more bigger line items done. But I will go in and I will correct that before I do a build, and then yeah. Okay, let me see if this is gonna work. If you guys can see my screen, this is our SDK, and this is basically the landmass of San Francisco North. So just to kind of give you an idea, is that when we delete that western island, like if I had to kind of give you like if I were to quantify the size of this map, if the engine doesn't crash, so from right here to right about here is roughly the size of like the western island, the one that's on the left. So it was essentially basically like that's to give you an idea of scale. And let me go into perspective. So you can see like this is like one of the biggest land masses we've built, and it's been put on hold while we work on the doctrine and the like model changes. But essentially, this is like the next expansion that's coming down the pipe right before the campaign is we release this textured and just kind of modeled. Worst case, there might be some areas that are still like not done, but you can see like it goes from like the Navy Yard here to basically where the Golden Gate Bridge would be. This is basically the little fort that they have under there. So you figure then you have a little like art museum here, and basically just like a quick little drive by. And then like give you an example, Treasure Island's right here. So your Treasure Island will be right here, where these two little bridges are, and then Alcatraz is right around here, and then Angel is way over here, and then yeah, so and then basically that the area that I was talking about theoretically would be way over here in the back in terms of like a little like island area. But that would be like later down the road. Our priority is going to be just getting San Francisco North in because it is massive. It's a sprawling urban like playground, and you can see there's a lot of assets here that are just still placeholders. So once we basically get more people coming over, and from the Doctrine revamp, getting in like around the time that we start doing AI and the polish finishes for the vehicles, we go see people starting to move back to going to each one of these buildings and essentially like giving them like a form and basically just kind of filling it in. And let me see if I can. It should work spawning in. We've made a lot of changes behind the scenes, so I can just kind of show you guys. Oh, this is the oopsie. You didn't see that? I gotta fix something real fast. Let me go to the bloody levels. I'm assuming that they're not. Oh yeah, they're blueprint loaded. They need to be set to always loaded. Yes, the guy with the Starfield logo is the. So naturally, when we introduce a new map, when we have more factions in play, the whole speed of the game is going to change. It's going to have to. Because it's one of those things where, like, now there's a lot more to work with, and you figure this is where it kind of comes down to the pop, where it's like we're going to have to like figure out that co-op stuff for like optimizing the movement components and the perception components and all the other stuff to essentially get the game cheaper so we can have more units and have more of a landmass, but at the same time keep it open world so that we're not streaming in we're not having loading screens. We're streaming in and we're not having loading screens. That's one of the biggest things that I want to avoid is having breaks and loading screens where you're continually just waiting. Give me one sec. It's like it's running a script right now that's like making it to the level loads. You guys can't see the window, so just bear with me a second. And then I'll be able to play into the map and show you just generally how large this map is from a scale standpoint. So let me save the master. I don't know why this setting was changed. It might have been a recent engine update because no one's been on this map for several months. So odds are it was probably like an automated change from a script that the engine runs. Let me catch up on just any questions you guys might have while this bloody saves. Can you guys even? Oh, you guys can't even see the save prompt. Let's see. We play, and then we scroll down. So for your question about co-op, it's coming. Like you figure at this point, I'm guesstimating around the summer because you figure it's like things are gonna take the time it takes because every time I rush, like I rushed on aspects of dynamic civilian groups, I rushed on other things because people really, really wanted other systems in, and I regret it. It's like you figure we need with the limited time and the resources that we have, we need to take the time we need to bake in and get the systems in that are already in there that people want, like like ironed out and fleshed out, and then push on like okay, like let's keep adding on these new systems. So after 1.3, going into the end of 1.3 is the whole point of just kind of like revitalizing the project and just kind of getting it to where it needs to be from a gameplay standpoint. So when Winters magically lands from her parachute from Narya, we'll see if she lands. Dang it! There's no navigation. I had to build navigation. I got screwed. But you can see a pretty good size of generally how large the map is. Where when we ran tests, it takes about 8 to 10 minutes to run from this corner to that corner over there in the wharfs. So, I mean, you're going. And then you'll have the freeways. You couldn't see that really on the other thing. But we're going to be experimenting with like fast lanes of travel in the future, where the idea is that you can reclaim and take control of these freeways and use them as highways to get between Treasure Island and to get to other parts of the city and secure the on-ramps and other areas like that to get around. And the idea is with the co-op, with the operators, you can have people on the ground like in Division, like just running around, doing their own thing while you're in RTS. So like that, for the person that asked the question earlier about what is my dream and goal for the game in a year, it's this. It's like adding this in and then getting in the other aspects, everything just kind of perfectly baked in and playable, and then having it to where like it's perfect, like it's a perfect simulation of just kind of you're on the ground, you don't have all the information, but you got to make the best of what you have, and you can see we've been slowly but surely just kind of baking in. The provinces and everything else, and there's no water here because you figure the water is in the other map. Let me see if I can build the navigation so that way I can give you guys a sense of just how long it takes to get around the map. That's weird. Let me just search for nav. There's nav modifiers here, but it looks like the nav bounds volume was deleted. Hold on. Okay, I'll do it live. Fuck it. Bear with me, cats. Let's do 20. Oh, that might be too big. Let's do 10. 10. 10. And then turn off game mode. Oh, it's nowhere near as large. Holy Jesus. Okay, let's do 200. That's not big enough. Okay, let's do 1,000. I mean, I'm only going to be running from one side to the other, so I guess it doesn't matter if it's not a perfect box. So basically what this is that in video games you have like a nav bounce that basically signifies the playable space that the computer is going to build, like how the AI move around the world. And you put this in there so it doesn't build navigation data in areas that are meaningless to take up extra resources on your computer, like RAM and hard drive space, because every pixel on the map has to be tracked and mapped on a 2D plane of where you can go and where you cannot go. So it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, you basically do something like this, like you build navigation, you pre-bake it, and then that allows you to see with colors, coding, where people can go, where they can't go, where vehicles can fit, where vehicles can't fit, and then you go back and you look at the colors to basically, like, it's like painting on the ground, where it signifies like where units are going to go and how they move and blah blah blah. So when it finishes building, because this map roughly takes about 2 minutes or so, I'll be able to spawn in and run a unit over, and then you guys can see just generally like what it looks like. Um, Let me scroll up and see what people are talking about. This map is not coming for at least like towards the end of the year, because you figure um, everyone was moved over to Doctrine, the vehicles, maps, just getting what we have done, what we have on the roadmap already situated. So when that's done, they'll move back to this map when the vehicles and all of them are cemented and done. They'll move over, and then they'll basically work on getting this map, situated for some kind of release this year. And then you can see this is the navigation, where it's like that just kind of signifies like, oh, and then like blue is special road nav or cyan, and then green is human navigation. You can't see the vehicle navigation because I have to turn off the green. But the idea is that people prioritize the roads over the green if they deem that it's faster to get to said location. You can see the freeways aren't properly mapped yet because they were a last minute addition before we moved everyone over to the Doctrine stuff. Let me spawn in and see if the navigation is going to play nicely. So that way I can kind of show you guys just generally how big this is. Let's see. Okay, does Winter's land? Oh, damn it. She's stuck in a landing state. Hold on. Oh, oops, you didn't see that. She must be stuck in a location that doesn't have... That's weird. I guess something else must have changed recently in the map to kind of cause it to act funny. Let me check one more thing. Let me turn off showing navigation because that nukes your performance. Hit tab. Oh, she's on the map now. Well, that happened. Let me just pre-place someone in and see if that fixes it. If it doesn't, then it's a bug, and I'm gonna have to look into it later in terms of basically just something's changed in the SDK that's causing it to act funny. Because this map is like a really quick, dirty map. It's supposed to be implemented into the other master. This master is a very like placeholder. So let me grab the operator, because then that way I can run around in first person, regardless. And then let me grab one of the heavies, and then let me spawn in. Once it bloody loads. What in the hell is that, Jet? I'm afraid of it. So the heavy's moving. Did the operator just face to the floor? Oh my. Is that the old operator? Is that the first person operator? Oh, it is the first person operator. You didn't see that. I put the wrong one in. That was an old blueprint. We were experimenting with having a first person operator. It was in the game for a while, but then we pivoted to having the a third person operator because it was more, you were just more consciously aware of your surroundings with it. Let's see. Oh, there you are. There you are, little Timmy. Okay. This is basically an old. This is like the San Francisco North map that hasn't been touched in a couple months, and this is something that I'm just showing an example of what's coming down the pipe later this year when we do the campaign. Is after we shift over from the doctrinal stuff. I'm just trying to show an example of how large the map is, and this map hasn't been touched in a couple months, suffice to say. So if I jump to the operator, oh yeah, she's broken. You can see that it also. Oh, actually, you won't be able to see that actually, because I've been cleaning up the operator here and there and redoing some of the animations for all the CERC, like I talked about earlier in the AmA, with like for all the units to just kind of fix visual bugs. Oh, you mean the melee? Yeah, we've been cleaning up the melee too. Like from that test project that we had, CPO, we've been basically learning a lot of things of what to do and what not to do for a third-person operator, and just to kind of make it like feasible. Oh wait, let me turn this on for the stream so people can actually see it on there. I'm so sorry.
What you
As
talking about?
oh
You talking
I'll
about?
yeah, you missed some shit. I'll tell you when after the stream. Just look to the chat and then send me a DM when you get caught up. You'll see it.
See what?
You'll see it eventually.
I see some
Uh,
fucking weird looking things.
what are you looking at? Okay, hold on. Let me just see if I can hide that.
Is it a text or is it a picture?
I'll just show you later. Hold on. Why is it being stupid? Oh, there we go. Okay, so now people on the stream can see it. Apologies. So basically, this is San Francisco North. And just to kind of give you an idea of the scope, I'm going to use slow-mo, and I'm going to run across the world. This is why, like, you figure, like, we pulled everyone off to work on the vehicles, and once the vehicles are done, and everyone's happy, and everything gets in for, like, the helicopters and the Abrams and everything else, then we'll pull them back off, and then we're going to move back to this map. And the goal will be basically kind of going through and essentially just kind of filling it in, and replacing the placeholder buildings that represent spaces in San Francisco with, their real world versions. Some assets will change entirely, the police stations and medical structs, because part of it is basically like using what we learned from Treasure Island to inform the design here, which is another reason why we've kind of put it off, because we're adding strategic resources. We're adding, like interiors for some of the buildings in Treasure Island. So as we slowly but surely get there, then we're going to come back. We're going to be like, okay, now we know how the game works. Now we're going to come back and basically, like, implement all those, like, final systems into this map. So you can see, like, here's the train car that goes down San Francisco on the wharf. Why have you been... I'm not even going to ask that question, Terminal, of why have you been zooming in on that. But you can kind of get a sense. You can reach out and you'll see. It's Terminal being Terminal. I would expect nothing less.
Oh my god. Terminal.
And again, this is 5 times. So if I was walking this normally, I would be way back yonder. And again, this is just an idea of just generally the scope and the size of the map as we're slowly but surely just kind of building it out. And then here's the docks area and the ports and whatnot. And then you can see the sun and the moon and everything coming up the day and night cycle. Then this is the old call. If you guys are used to play the old builds, like old builds from 2020, that's the old like baseball stadium. Because we moved it over here because that was supposed to be a replica of the one in San Francisco. But we were never sure if we were going to be able to get to San Francisco. But then the engine changed and they added double float precision, and we were like, oh shit, it's game time. We need to start moving stuff around and make unique assets for Treasure Island to distinguish it. So that way we can just kind of get to that point of having the baseball stadium.
Can we play baseball at the baseball stadium?
You give me crippling depression sometimes. Nah, I don't know.
Good. I fucking hope I do. You deserve it.
Oh.
You can't cook a steak.
I cooked it. I made rubbery steaks, and he had to show me on webcam how to cook it properly. That was a whole thing.
That was a whole thing.
We don't talk
But
about
we
that.
figured it out.
It's like Fight Club. We don't talk about that.
We figured it out in the end.
Yeah, we figured it out. We had to broil it.
Yeah. We had to cook it in
shit.
the fry pan.
I was about to run into the water. Yeah, no, if I had gone down there, it'd be all over. There's a kill Z volume. So it would immediately kill me because we haven't added in the ability for the operator to swim yet. So, yeah, if I touched down there, GG. And I'd have to start the whole No, I'm not starting the whole simulation over again. For all I know, I'm going to accidentally touch one of these poles and then fall off into the world and die horribly. Because, some of these areas have, bad collision. So again, let me just see if I can pop out. You guys can get an idea of this is a very large world. And then you have Point Hill here, which I didn't even get to that point, where it's our version of Point Hill in the middle center of San Francisco. So again, it's one of those things where it's like Coolio, where this is what we're working on after. So after Doctrines, when the modelers and level designers free up, this is what they'll be working on. And to basically get it out. Yeah? Oh, yeah?
So, it's when I play on that map, it's not going to be Point Hill anymore. It's going to be Artillery Hill.
Oh, god damn it.
It's going to be where I put all of my artillery and I'm going to have a shitload of fun. Just high infested, buy infested.
You're the kind of person that makes you want to figure out how to implement climbing for these hills just to dick you.
Oh, you can try. You can try. I have broken your spirit before. I will do it again.
Yeah, no, legitimately, I'm that's just not even on the roadmap right now, but I'm sure we're gonna have to look at some counter for that. Because you figure, oh my god, I can just imagine people just blockading all the entrances to this hill, turning it into a super max prison for CERC, and just using the hills as artillery to just kind of level out the entire map. And you gotta remember the mortars in Cepheus Protocol are really, really long. So, they're not real world values, but they're pretty damn high. Where you can bang really far away, from those mortars, and the only thing that's limiting it really is logistics of getting ammo in and out. But again, I just want to be very conscious that this is still 6 months out minimum. This is a long-term goal to basically get this map out. I know we've been showing it and teasing it for a long time, but it's been more so just it's one of those things that we're working on the back end when we have the time, and we'll be shifting over more resources after the Doctrine stuff in about, look at my calendar. Because I would estimate the Doctrine stuff will take February and March. I'd probably argue that we'll be shifting people over to this map around April. And then because March and April will be around the time, ideally, when we start working on the operator should only take a couple of weeks because me and Michael will be doing most of the work right now in preemptly. And you figure, so March and April, will be pretty much just kind of moving into the AI, I would argue. That's why I'm kind of optimistic for summer, around June, July for co-op, is what I would argue. But, yeah. New recoil system is god-awful. It's Cepheus Protocol? Is it garbage? Is it garbage?
It's not that bad.
Oh, okay. I mean, I don't know. I thought he was talking about Cepheus as our recoil is garbage. I wasn't. I mean, you figure we still want to improve it quite a bit for Cepheus to make it a little more like Battlefield and Call of Duty for when you're shooting it for the character, because we want to make it to where people actually want to play. Oh, I'm in slow mo still, so I'm going to empty my magazine in like 1 second. But the biggest thing about the operator is being able to make it to where any one of your friends that like to play third-person shooters can jump in and play and have fun, and they can play for hours as you're just playing from an RTS standpoint. And then that way you can coordinate and collaborate and work together with your friends. So, yeah, if it does end up sucking, do tell me for the spread and the recoil, because you're actually going to notice a different spread going into tonight's update for the operator. Is that we redid the spread for everyone. So the shotguns are more useful now. So do give it a look after I release the patch tonight. We gotta wrap this up. We've been going for almost 2 hours. I can fill you in on the fun Durvar. But I'm trying to see. Actually, let me go ahead and switch off the stream back to the podcast, and I'll start cooking the build in the back end. So that way, when I go offline, it'll be mostly ready to go.
Hey, Robert, quick question for you though.
Body is ready for questions.
How long until we add Imperial Knights?
I hate you. Is that like the new fucking? Is that the new Gundam question? Like everyone wants me to add mechs. Now they're gonna start adding
No.
they're adding mechanical mechs.
Imperial Knights?
Whoa. No, we're not adding those. What is wrong with you? So it is like copyright infringement up the ass. If someone wants to mod it, be my guest, but I'm not adding that in.
But look, people want the Imperial Knight.
Oh my god, Terminal, you're such a troll.
What about the Imperial Knight Flamer edition?
None of them. None. None. But I'm trying to think what else was there. I guess we'll wrap it up there. Unless there's any other questions you guys wanted to hit upon. Like what, you want to take like 2 more questions there, Var, then we can pop down? Can I zoom in on her assets before you end? No!
Yeah,
Oh my
right.
god! I
That's-
just saw that
that's
comment
fine.
like so. You want to do that? Open the game and just go in. It's in the build right now.
It's just zoom in titties.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, yeah. So you want to just pull one more question, a really good one, and then we'll pop from there.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find one more question. Lord, if it is a lordy thing. Dear Lord. Anybody got any more questions? Yeah, I don't. I see a heap of people writing, but I'm not sure if that's anything. Will a drone get weapons?
The drone? You mean the one on the roadmap? I mean, sorry. You mean wait, drone? Wait, what drone is he talking about? You're talking about the scout drone. Shit, sorry. Some of it from the CERC tent. No. We want to keep that purely unarmed. If we're going to add a predator drone, it's going to be a separate thing under the air doctrine, which is something that we've talked about. But for right now, it's one of those things where it's like it's kind of wish list in terms of basically adding air units. Because we talked about a predator drone, and we talked about a couple other things, but they're just not feasible right now based off of the workload we already have. So it's a wish list. But yeah. God damn it, the Imperial Knights. And then,
I
but
think
the cats.
terminal with this. Would you rather unlimited bacon or no games, or no bacon but unlimited no games?
I hate you.
I
So,
hate you.
So for Luigi, I can't say his name correctly, Luigi. This will be on YouTube almost immediately. So if you want to rewind and catch up on what you missed, it will be there. So, because I know you said your wife will get late to come, but yeah, it is recorded on YouTube. So if you want to watch it later, you totally can. Um, okay. So, is there anything else that you want to pull, Derivar, or we'll end it there?
Um, can we get a beginning military base to start on on the map we can defend? You don't need to say that 3 times.
Yeah, you're right. 3 times.
Yes.
Oh, Terminal really wants a pull for a non-Chelsea mode. Holy shit. Oh yeah, perhaps you just posted that picture like 2 times I think in the last like hour. Let me get back to you on that. It's in my conscious, but you figure it's like I don't want to allocate your resources to that just yet, but I know that basically people want me to do a poll. I'll put it up eventually. Um, anything else there, Var? One last question. Tiebreaker.
1 second.
Oh, let me check the YouTube chat. No, nothing.
Last question. Sorry, not sure if this question has been asked, but already, are they going to be more naval units?
There. Oh, damn it! I've answered like a million. No, for right now, it's just gonna be the carrier and the aircraft and the oh my god, having a brain fart. Oh my god, help me out here, Jeremiah.
The hovercraft.
Hovercraft. Fuck. Oh my god, I need to eat something. So yeah, it's only gonna be those two for right now. Those are the tests. We're gonna see how they go. We're gonna see how the performance is, and then go from there. But for right now, based off of all the way up to 1.3, it's not planned. It's just one of those things where we have to just kind of see how things go. Um, that is already being added in right now as we speak, Commander Castile, where the update I'm about to release adds in guns to the carrier. The first set of guns. And then more guns are coming to the carrier on Monday, Tuesday. That will wrap up the defensive placements on the carrier. And then at that point, we'll be working on the hovercraft. Right now, I'm just updating the build version. And then I'm going to basically release it on experimental. Let me just update the build to 7. And I'm going to start the build script right now. Okay, so then, Dervi, why don't you give the outro? Because I got to start cooking on this build. So that way I can get it out pretty darn soon.
You gotta start cooking in general.
That, no. I see what you did there.
Good. Anyway, thank you all for coming along. Thank you very much, Robert, for being here. If you'd like to continue to support Cepheus Protocol's development, we do have a Patreon. Wait, hang on. Don't we have more ways to... Hang on, haven't you added more fucking ways to do it?
Oh my god.
You haven't told me. You haven't kept up. Anyway, we've also got a support thing on support DLC for the game.
We have to support DLCs on Steam. You can pledge on Discord, you can pledge on Patreon, or you can buy merch. And if you pledge on Discord or Patreon, generally you'll always get developer builds like before everyone else sometimes. Because like they get dead builds. So when I'm testing, they can play it and they can basically spy on me. Whenever I launch Cepheus Protocol on Discord, typically I'm in a dead build. So essentially, yeah. No, we're not adding any more DLCs foreseeably for at least 6 months to a year. Not until the game is out of early access. So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we don't want to add any more support DLCs or anything else until to a point where the game is out of early access and it is done. Co-op is out, campaign is out, and basically just it's a finished game. And then at that point, like I said on the forums, we're gonna look at the poll we did previously, do another poll if this is necessary, and then figure out what do people want. Because some people wanted cosmetics, some people wanted new vehicles, some people wanted new doctrines. Like there was a huge spectrum. of people. Some people just wanted new maps. Like one idea we were floating around is like adding New York. So like after we finish San Francisco North, after we implement that, maybe we consider adding like Manhattan as like a non-canon DLC or whatever, where you can go and you can fight there or something. And we change the lieutenant, so we just do it as like a viral outbreak one for like the idea that Terminal was getting. So it's like it's one of those things where we don't know. It's more so just kind of seeing what people want and then going for that. And for the pricing, I have no idea. The idea is that they're going to be reasonably priced in terms of like not an arm and a leg. Like you figure it's going to be really, really. We have to justify over $5 to $10. Like realistically, when it comes down to it, we have to really justify over that. So it's one of those things where like I can't really tell you until a year from now, 8 months from now, when we're at the point where everything's in there, we're caught up on the roadmap, and then at that point we're gonna be like, okay, we're launched out of EA, we're shifting to post-launch support, we're gonna put a poll up, we're gonna compare and contrast to the old poll, and then we're gonna start working on some free stuff and work on some paid like big packs like DLCs or packs like like new factions like new Doctrine thing whatever like is one idea is like one example we were floating around is like a pyromancy Doctrine pack or like a evil CERC pack where you get to weaponize the virus and we add like whole new airstrikes and new units and stuff like that kind of like prototype that are non-canon but they're just for fun kind of deal. um but anyhow, now I digress. So you figure
Anywho,
yeah, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate you guys
yeah,
taking the
it's been
time
great.
to come here, ask questions. There was a little bit of turbulence earlier from the thing, and it
With
is
a
what
lot
it.
of publishers, as far as what Robert and I have discussed, he's told me he's not going with publishers.
I don't want to go with the publisher unless they uniquely understand the game, and it's not just something else they're adding into their investment portfolio. We have had people approach us previously and offer us to get anywhere between us 200,000 to a million, and it was purely just people that didn't know what they were investing in, didn't play games, didn't understand games, and they saw it as a product. And it was basically just kind of like, and then they were gonna have really really over the top strict deadlines where we couldn't even like just to like have this sit down and talk to you guys, we would have to get their approval to implement anything, and we wouldn't even own our IP anymore. We would own it in how my lawyer said it is basically we would it would basically it's like fake ownership of IP almost, where they can do whatever the hell they want, but you still own it. Ha! Am I right? So they can just go out and do whatever they want with it. So it was basically one of those things where it was like we haven't gotten the right deal, we haven't gotten the right person to approach us yet. That actually just said, it comes to us with the right deal. And if that doesn't happen, then we have to just stay within our means, and we have to keep just working within the constraints of what we already have, of the budget we make from our day jobs and the budget we make from Steam, and just keep on rolling. Um, well, I mean, I don't want to speculate on what other companies do. I'm just telling you what we've got, and I can't name the companies. I can just tell you there were 3 companies that approached us since 2020, and all 3 we told no. And it was just one of those things where it was just kind of like we had bad vibes. The whole team told us no. It would have been life changing money. Everyone would have basically been getting like a living wage. They wouldn't have to work a day job, and they told me no because they got this bad vibe that I got in terms of basically just like little small things that they would say or hint in the contract where it was just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna pass. So we're not that desperate for money. Like we can wait till things blow up and it gets to the point where the game is, feature complete and it's where it needs to be, and then we start to cement ourselves long term after early access by doing post-launch content, so we can basically further develop and fund our efforts. Um, I don't plan on making a sequel, Tarkin. I don't want to make a sequel. Like you figure, I want to make other games in the future, other genres, But I see Cepheus Protocol as like a 5 year like thing where it's like, yeah, we're gonna release, and then it's gonna be the Crusader Kings. But I don't want to make a Crusader. I don't want to make a Cepheus Protocol too. I just don't see a point in it. I'd rather just keep refining and cleaning up and improving the core of the base game like Solaris. So it's like, yeah. I mean, I keep going back to Solaris because to me that's the golden goose of basically like what we're trying to accomplish as an indie team, which is very difficult to say the least. I don't know what Stardock is. What is Stardock? Is that a meme? Derval, you might know what that is. Is that a publisher? Oh, it's a publisher. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't, again, like, we haven't dabbled too much into it because the first three kind of turned us off. Because they were companies that approached us. And, like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, we just tend to put our heads in the sand and just focus on game dev, because we just feel like at this point it's better suited just us figuring it out and doing it the hard way and it taking the time it needs. And if we get a big uptick of sales, then it gets reallocated into basically speeding things up. So it's just one of those things. Um, if you say battle royale, I'm gonna throw you into the river terminal.
Wait, what?
She said battle royale for
Yeah,
Cepheus Protocol.
if you want to say battle royale, I will throw you in with the sharks.
Yeah. Like the only thing I would consider to be doing anything remotely like that would be like an escape mode where you have to like escape San Francisco as like the operators or something like that. Where it's like some kind of side mode where it's like you start in third person and like you have to basically get off the island for a timer by any means necessary, and during that all the factions are waging a war and you're a neutral party. But like that's something that's like more of a wish list, like dream side mode I want to do outside of like the RTS by using the framework and then just kind of adding small little chunks here and there, like operator missions or whatever. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like I have like a whole list of things that are just kind of like in the back of my mind, but we don't have the time and the resources to do it just yet. So it's more so just kind of biding my time and being patient. Um, all right. So then again, thank you guys so much for coming. Really do appreciate y'all. And I hope you guys have a great weekend. We will be back in, let me check the events. We'll be back for a development update on Saturday, February 3rd at 5 o'clock. At that time, it will serve as I guess you could say like a roll up of just essentially like what other things you guys like about the carrier, kind of showing you guys everything we have up to date. We'll have some stuff to show for the hovercraft at that point in terms of some whip stuff. If we're lucky, it's on experimental by the 3rd, but it just kind of depends. Um, but yeah, again, thank you guys, and you guys have a great evening.